Before these walls, the walls of the Ives Memorial Library were erected. The New Haven Free Public Library lived in a cramped second floor in a cramped building on Chapel Street. And when the doors were first opened, all they led to were 26 newspapers and 80 periodicals. This is the first page in the history of the New Haven Free Public Library, and that is the page that welcomes the audience as they enter. But they soon quickly realize that two of those most responsible for turning the pages of the history of New Haven are also with them. It was Mrs. Ives' extremely generous gift that freed the library's collection and allowed it room to grow in a new house. And Mr. Gilbert, whose visionary architectural skills are on display at the Woolworth Building and the United States Supreme Court, to name a paltry few, was the man that turned this house into a home. Mr. Gilbert can barely contain his excitement as he begins to show Mrs. Ives, who has never yet seen the house that bears her name, what he has created.
Mrs. Ives, did you see them, the similarities, when you first saw our building? The marble and the brick. Should we go back out front? I could show you, point out how this building echoes that wonderful building across the street, the North Church, or what these folks probably know as the United Church on the Green. That's what I wanted, a building full of echoes. It doesn't matter how tall a building soars. If it doesn't sing, it's not worth a dime. But this one, this building, if you listen, there are echoes everywhere. Gorgeous echoes of that elegant church, but also that humble, simple house that was here before, the Bristol House. I still have a pang here that we had to destroy it. Mrs. Ives, did you know it? We had to take it down, but I wanted it to still be able to talk, or at least whisper, soft but strong. I wanted to be able to hear the echoes of that building when this one fell silent.
Mr. Gilbert, there are really no words to describe it. What you've done. But please, just for a moment, use no words and let me take it in for the first time. Let me listen for the echoes.
Mrs. Ives, you should say something. A speech, perhaps, but something.
And why is that, may I ask?
Because, Mrs. Ives, the concrete below their feet, the brick and the marble, it's yours. This is yours, all of it. This is your building.
Mr. Gilbert, this is not my building. I ask you, Mr. Gilbert, what is more welcoming than an open book?
Well, Mrs. Ives, I have to admit, I am quite partial to a heavy, rich, red curtain opening slowly on a garden scene. The drama of it.
Perhaps close, but I still say it cannot hold a candle to the opening of a book. Because with a book, it's just you and it. It's personal. It's relationship. Yes, sometimes rocky and hard, but always deep and true and personal. And permanent. It's an embrace, an open book. And once you accept that embrace, it joins the ranks of the immortal. It cannot be destroyed.
Like a monumental piece of architecture.
Yes, that's it exactly. It has been treasured, and so it cannot be destroyed. And so I thought, what better way of honoring my husband, of honoring our love, than allowing all of New Haven to experience the immortal, imperative relationship of reader and word. I wanted this building to be a reflection of its home, not just a home for reflection.
Yes! Yes! That's the exact way to put it. Yes, exactly. That's what I wanted as well. I wanted to create not a building, but a mirror. I wanted the people that cast their eyes upon it to see not just today, but yesterday. To see not just the side of the street that they were facing, but what was behind them as well. To see not just themselves, but the unbroken line of great New Haven men and women, such as you and your husband, that came before them.
Well, I hope you know, Mr. Gilbert, that you have joined us and the others in that unbroken line.
Mrs. Ives, please. I blush when I'm complimented.
It was my dream that this one room would be full of embellishments celebrating New Haven. But as it's turned out, the entire library has been turned over to do so. It's amazing to think that my one hope flew into the ether and has returned not alone, but followed by an entire flock. Oh, I'm very glad they chose to land here. It's a suitable site for it, if I say so myself.
Mrs. Ives, one question.
Of course, Mr. Gilbert.
Could we go back out front? I would love to show you how...
Mr. Gilbert, there's plenty of time for that. I think we should see what these folks with the umbrellas have planned for us.
Yes. Yes, of course, of course. Let's.
So, turn over your books and find the place where this evening's story will begin for you. And if you have questions, fear not. For your guides are a folk who always know where to go for the answers. Librarians. So, when I call out your first place, gather round your librarian guide. Branching out. Noah and Sam. Balance a dime. R.I.P. And in circulation. Prologue. This story that I have chosen to spell out over these next few short pages is hard, and it refuses to soften. It fights against the knife. This story has far too many heroes, and not nearly enough of those mustachioed men that make a storyteller's job easier. It takes nothing to lift a hand and extend a finger, but where there is conflict and no culprit, well, that is a much different story. Our story. There is truth in this tale, but a true one it cannot be called. I think of it as a dime. A tiny sliver of silver lying in the open, grinning in the sunlight like a shard of broken glass, daring a passerby to lean over and scoop it up unharmed. But just as many as would stoop to conquer the 10-cent piece, there is an equal number who would walk simply by, nose upturned. For some, our dime is treasure. For others, no different than a hunched-up, discarded cigarette nub. For some, this will sound like a morality tale. But there are others who see in color, not blacks and whites. And it is we who believe that the truth of a coin does not live on its head or its tail, but instead balances delicately on its edge. So I ask that for the next few moments you hold your breath as I hold mine, so we together can try to do the impossible. Balance a dime on its edge.
Chapter 1, The Will.
Or How Words Matter.
This is a story of one man in three bodies.
The New Haven Free Public Library.
The Young Men's Institute.
And the City of New Haven.
Three bodies, three groups of men forever attached for better or worse because of one man.
Philip Merritt was how the ink pronounced that man's name once it was dry on his will.
But it was not an ordinary official signature that lit the fuse.
It wasn't a name, but three simple words that rung the bell on this match.
Though they were never as simple as they feel rolling off the tongue.
Three simple words that spun a web so complex, even the most proud spider would have stood back and marveled at its complexity.
Any public library.
You see, Philip Merritt left a great estate to his daughter that would, upon her taking her last breath, be given divided among several public institutions. 1/10 of the estate, a sum of was, quote, to be applied by the proper authorities for the purchase of books at the Young Men's Institute or any public library which may from time to time exist in said city, end quote.
Said city being New Haven, of course.
For the Young Men's Institute.
Or any public library.
$60,000 promised to the Young Men's Institute, a New Haven institution since August of 1826, when 8 men who happened to work with their hands took their intellectual betterment into those very hands and founded what they called the Apprentices Literary Association.
Those 8 men and the rest that soon followed them in their course of self-development were without patron or finance. In the beginning, all they had was desire and each other.
I wonder if those men knew what road they'd begun to pave. Could they have imagined that they had started not a line of wanderers, but of trailblazers? That those first few steps on that unmarked trail would lead to a full-fledged journey?
And could they even have thought that at the end of that trail would have laid $60,000?
Because the rewards of Mr. Merritt's gifts would have not just blessed the members of the Institute, but the entire city. $60,000 would have made a great public library a free one as well.
But Mr. Merritt, a proud member and frequent visitor to the Institute, sat down to write his will at a time when the future of the Young Men's Institute was not followed by a period, but rather a question mark.
Merritt did not want his money to rot, so he did what anyone would do in case of rain. He took an umbrella. Or any public library.
So, with a couple of flicks of the wrist, Mr. Merritt changed the course of history. He became an absentee traffic guard. He made a mess of the intersection between the library and the Institute, and he also unintentionally taught a very important lesson. Words matter.
Chapter 2, upon which our narrator removes his mask and reveals some difficulties.
I was at that intersection, but I was not simply a passive observer, a Wesleyan graduate at a Yale-Harvard game. For you see, I, your humble host, Mr. Willis Kimball Stetson, was the first librarian at the New Haven Free Public Library. But I have always respected the Institute because they managed to stay afloat amongst the many storms that attacked them. Even the most inexperienced sailor could lower the sails and hope for the best as the tempest wails. But the Institute did not simply close their eyes and leave their fate to luck. They understood the importance of their journey, which is why I could never look upon the Institute as rivals, as the tails to our heads. The wind in our sails was just too similar. There are some men who are content to fill the shelves of their homes with treasure, as they would their bank accounts, that no one else can touch or be touched by. But there are others who understand that self-growth is locked together with community service like sides of a coin, and that a man, like a city, cannot become whole or healthy or great without knowledge. Well, I know what some of you are thinking. How can this man deliver a story fair and balanced when his face is all but stamped on one side? To that, I do have an answer. A narrator with a conflict of interest is the perfect voice for a story with so many characters whose interests are conflicted.
Chapter 3.
2 plans.
No solutions. Merritt put a $60,000 rock on the tip of a cliff.
But it was the trustee of his will that chose to kick it down one side and not the other.
The trick to that kick was whom he had chosen to protect the legacy of his gift.
You see, the trustee of Mr. Merritt's will, the body entrusted to enact his final wishes, was none other than the city of New Haven.
And the way the city saw it, they were teetering on the border of good and great, but they were not whole. There was a void. They needed a public library, and they wanted it to be free.
But what of the Institute Library?
You may ask yourself,
Well, it was a public library.
And a great one at that.
It should have been a marriage made in heaven.
The city wanted a free library.
The Institute wanted to be free.
and what a dowry $60,000 would have been.
Unfortunately, the two had courted unsuccessfully before.
Quite unsuccessfully, in fact.
In 1872, the Institute asked the city for help to stay afloat.
The city said no. In 1880, the city asked the Institute to pay taxes on its newly built home.
The Institute said no.
And the courts agreed.
But those are just scratches on the surface. Superficial.
The real rift began 6 years later when an attempt was made by both sides to ignore their recent history and create an alliance.
Create a free public library.
2 plans were presented to the city by the Institute.
The Institute thought that no plans could be more fair.
The city felt otherwise.
Then after that, the Institute walked one way down the street.
And the city walked in the other.
Only what they didn't know was the street was far from straight. It curved in on itself like a snake swallowing its tail.
And in this equation, the mouth of that snake was Mr. Merritt's money.
Sometimes it's just easier to start again, anew. The past can cast shadows too dark and heavy to ever escape from under. So the city, with Merritt's money in its pockets, rejected collaboration and instead chose creation. Sometimes you have to be selfish, though you know that your decisions contain within them the ability to alter or even hurt. Question is, though, can a decision be called selfish if so many prosper from its making?
I am quite proud of what the New Haven Free Public Library has become, and not just because its successes have been splashed upon the pages of newspapers, although I must admit I have clipped some of those articles for archival purposes. But it is the site of a seamstress, schoolgirl, and businessman waiting in line together that I wish I could clip and file away forever. Looking upon them, had it not been for those 3 words,
Any
Public
Library.
that same schoolgirl, businessman, seamstress would be waiting in line together at the Free Institute Library.
Chapter 4.
The end. Thus far. I am an old man now and can only know what I've learned. But I am like anyone else, whether they are at the beginning of their journey or nearing the end. I harbor that deep desire to look out across the ocean of time and know what will wash up on shore. But that is, however, unfortunately impossible. So all I can do now is stick my toes in the water and hope. Hope that both sides of this story can continue to feel the push of the wind in their sails. Hope that somehow, somewhere, these 2 great traditions can cease to be disparate stamped sides, can escape the twisted history of $60,000, and can meet upon that thin ridged edge with hands outstretched.
May 26th, 1990. While it would have been ideal to clean all of the murals at the outset, this was impossible due to the structural damage to the panels. The murals were cleaned wherever possible with a dilute solution. The microflake was touched up with the number 72 resin in xylene, and in the areas that required refilling, it was completed with polyfill, synthetic paste. Without more time or more funding, this is all we will be able to complete by June 15th, 1990. Moisture damage is still apparent on 2 of the major panels that remain outside. The degree of damage prior to the renovation of the library 2 years ago was significantly less, and 4 weeks would have been a sufficient timeline to complete the restoration. However, with the damage sustained by the murals over the past 2 years, a full recovery will be impossible.
That green is a little off. After being asleep for 20 years, he returns home to find it in ruins. What do you think? Frank!
You won't believe what they just faxed over. This is a nightmare.
Frank, look at this. I think the green that we mixed yesterday is a little off.
The budget. They pulled the rug right out from under us.
Are you pulling my leg? What are you talking about? We still have 4 panels to finish before they open Children's Library. And Mr. Brown already approved another purchase of supplies.
And now they pulled the funding.
Destroyed the mural renovation.
Well, it's like I've been saying for the past 2 weeks. We'll do the best.
You're not Frank. You're not Lois. Who are you?
We're conservators, Patricia, not magicians.
How did you get in here?
We've always enjoyed a challenge.
We were commissioned for 4 weeks of work. This should have taken twice that.
Excuse me.
Listen, I've started a letter to the Preservation Trust already. Believe
I'm
me,
sorry, you're not
frustration
supposed to be
will
here.
Whatever, Patricia.
Fine. What would you like to cut?
Cut this out and pay attention to me, will you?
Let's take a look, one panel at a time.
Okay, I'll dictate as we go.
This is a federal work site, and I'm sorry, but you have to leave
The
immediately.
story of Rip Van Winkle, Public Works of Art Project, number 8, 1934. Designed and painted by Salvatore Maio and Frank
What
J.
happened to the
Rakowski.
clock with the booth?
At least we salvaged the title page.
Yeah, some color diminishment, but that's to be expected.
Who painted these leaves?
What is with those leaves?
I made a first pass. I thought I'd be able to go through with more detail, but now.
Why can't you hear me?
Panel 1 complete. Panel 2, Hudson Valley map.
Some chunks still missing, little grime in the corner. Patricia, what's this crack?
Crack?
You mean the Hudson Valley?
No, I mean the Grand Canyon running down the center of the panel.
I did the best I could.
The best you could. This is nothing like my work. What is going on here?
Like before.
This is
It's
filthy.
covered in grime.
It's so
And
dirty.
the
And
307's island
and it looks so
becomes too fine
so
for me.
old. I
It's
just
dusted
painted
right
this
off.
last
I
week.
couldn't do much else without compromising the integrity of the paint.
Integrity of the paint.
This is a nightmare. I mean, when Salvatore died, he had dozens of paintings to his name. Now he
Died?
has 5. And this is the
Died?
way to preserve his memory.
It's not so bad.
This panel.
Can we move on, please? Panel 2 completed to partial satisfaction. Panel 3, man and his dog.
I'm not dead.
Not bad.
Thank you. Panel 3 complete, degradation at a minimum. Panel 4 at the end.
See, now we're at it. There was bubbling, flaking, macro and micro. I can't walk away from this.
Well, you know, I think that we have the time.
Not if we want to restore the panels out in the hallway.
The hallway?
Steve, we're not going to get to the hallway.
What are you talking about? This mural has been here for 50 years and they
50
destroyed
years?
it in 2. We're gonna leave it that way? It looks like third-degree burns out there.
I don't want to do it all so poorly that they'll fall apart in 10 years anyway. We need to choose the panels that we can save.
Oh, so we're Solomon now, cutting the baby in half.
They've already cut it in half!
Patricia, you've already finished the flesh tones. You can do the rest in a week. We can stretch everything else out.
Steven, even if we work for free and don't sleep, there's no way we can have this finished with the time and the money that they've given us.
Patricia, they already destroyed half of it. The story now ends with Rip Van Winkle waking up. We're gonna let that dissolve into dust now too? I feel like I found myself in the right room at the wrong time.
You can say that again.
Can you imagine everything you put into this? Every brushstroke, every detail. 5 paintings left and we didn't get here in time.
Well, I didn't make these rules, Steven. We have to do the best we can with what they give us.
Patricia, don't you remember when we first walked into this room?
That
When it was
was
still
2
the children's
years
room
ago,
before
Steven.
the renovation?
2 years
When
of
we knew we
crime
could
and
return the
bond
life back into
damage
this
and
paint.
abuse.
2 years is nothing! He painted this 56 years ago.
Right, because Roosevelt paid him to do it. The WPA is dead, Steven. Nothing lasts forever. And isn't that what this painting is about? It's about the passage of time.
Yeah,
you know?
but our work is about the preservation of time. And you would let it die. Okay, look. What happened to the rest
Of what?
of his paintings?
You know what happened to them, Steven.
I want to hear you say it.
I want to hear you say it.
I don't want to think about it.
Say it.
They burn.
They burned.
They burned?
4 years after he died. He died thinking that he was immortal.
No! No.
Lost everything, Penny.
So let's go take a look at what's left.
What is going on here? What is happening? I just nodded off for a moment and now I've awoken into a nightmare. My paintings burned, destroyed. I've just been here too long. Yes, I've just been here too long. I'm just tired. I'm just so tired. Frank and Lois will be here shortly, and then we'll finish our work. Yes, they'll come, and then we'll finish. I just need some rest. Yes, I just need some rest. I just need to sleep. Just close my eyes and sleep.
So what do you think?
Well, I mean, I can't walk away either.
Good. So we move forward. We fight. Let's get to work.
Stephen, wait. The practical concerns are still there. We have a million obstacles staring us in the face. What are we going to do without the money? We don't have enough paint or enough chemicals.
We have enough to
supplies.
restore the macroflaking, to clean them. We can make them shine. Look, I'm not going to be able to rest. He's not going to be able to rest unless we try, right? At the very least, try.
We better get to work then.
Thank you.
That green is a little off. After being asleep for 20 years, he returns home to find it in ruins. What do you think? Frank! Frank! Look at this. I think the green that we mixed yesterday is a little off. Yes.
collector of every tale, and wear each one wrapped round me like a veil. For I seek them out in all their glory, fill my pockets with their secrets and stories. From branch to branch I discover new things. Here, in the woods, where the owl nightly sings.
By day she studies, works and does chores, but as day turns to night, its lore she adores.
I seek out a light and raise it up high. These woods belong to my sisters and I. We welcome you to come in and explore under branches, leaves, and petals and more.
You never know what might be round the bend.
Some stories evolve while others just.
He who travels happily must travel light. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the Little Prince.
There are some books of which the backs and covers are by far the best parts. Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist, Love is a great beautifier. By Louisa May Alcott, Little. I can't explain myself, brave sir. It's I'm not myself, you see. Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland, Starfish, and Julian Plankton by Charles Dickens, The Christmas Carol.
A good book has no ending. R.D. Cummings. What is your first memory of a library? My first and favorite memory of the Stetson Library is sitting in the nook to the right of the stack, listening to stories being read by the librarian. Anonymous.
Where is your favorite nook in the library? In the area to the right of the entrance, where you come in, where magazines and periodicals are located. E. Chapman, age senior citizen, library main branch. What is your first memory of a library? Walking to my local library for the Nancy Drew Mystery Series. Angela, age unknown, Stetson Library.
Why is the library special to you? It enlightens you to the possibilities in and out of the world. Anonymous again.
Why is the library special to you? I think the library is special because it is always changing. I come here once a week, and I always find something new. Name Jack, age 45, Library Fairhaven. Why is the library special to you? I love watching my son explore and discover new books. It is even more amazing to watch him walk out carrying a new favorite. Janie, age 31, Stetson Library.
Come all you wanderers, gather around. Read these stories from neighbors I found.
Come read them.
From Wilson, Stetson, branches they grow. From Mitchell, Fairhaven, and Ives they flow.
Do you have a story you wish to share? Pen, paper, and ink awaiting right there.
Go to right one? Or that you push it in right one? You wanderers gather under our tree, finding of one last book, then bed. You can all take a seat over there. It's bedtime.
My head is not weary. Eyes wide awake. This horse is full of choices to make. This book, or this one, or that one right there. I will stay way up as long as I dare. Keep your lullaby. Don't lull me to sleep. I have two certain secrets to keep. Well, pick out one for now, and maybe one more. Stack the rest up by your bed on the floor.
The night sky is full. The moon rises high. Get comfy and cozy.
No lullaby!
Of course, not yet. I wouldn't dare to sing.
We would never distract from daydreaming. Here are the piles of books we will start. Pages and pages to turn in the dark. Which one tonight?
Yeah.
How about we pick on this one?
Just thought I'd try. And so we come to that time of night when books must wait for the morning light.
Now you must travel on. Collect new tales. Pocket them as you discover new trends.
Good night.
Webster and Samuel Morse met in 1823 on Grove Street, here in New Haven. The creator of the telegraph and the American dictionary together, here in New Haven. But in 1823, after 16 years of work, Noah Webster was still not done. And in 1823, Samuel Morse was just a painter, and his life's work had not even begun. No one knows what they say if those two had met today on Elm Street, here in New Haven. Spelling, definition, origin. Noah? Man cave! You let them put man cave in the dictionary!
I didn't let them. I make suggestions for new words and phrases. That was not mine.
Man cave.
We start nominating words for next year's edition soon. I promise they'll be better.
They better.
Late as always.
Did you get my text?
It's off.
Of course. Here I am.
Yes, it's good to see you.
You too. So, you wrote to tell me? Sorry, I'll put it on silent. You have my undivided attention.
What are you doing?
Just checking in online and, tagging you in a photo. You want to see?
I'm already here. I just experienced that literally seconds ago.
So, untag?
Our marketing team can't stand that I'm not up on the latest, greatest. They want me tweeting about my job.
The man who wrote to me in pen and ink.
Yes, the dictionary has a Twitter account. Only 1/4 of my time is devoted to research anymore. The rest is spent answering vexatious questions of students who want us to finish their homework. They tweet at us. What does
vexatious mean?
Look it up. What is it with people's need for the instantaneous?
That is the MO of today, my friend. If it's not online, it didn't happen. Everybody wants to have the answer now. Everybody wants to share the news.
True, but
everybody wants to be the first to tag.
The first to brag.
The first to accrue the views.
Everybody wants to be the first to click.
Everybody wants to get a shot.
For what?
Everybody wants to share their life online.
The first to whine.
The first to type first. A lot.
Yesterday's pace is already too slow. If you're not in the now, then you're not in the know.
Even Siri will soon be a bore. Everything is faster than before.
You were always the first to make a move.
The tortoise doesn't win anymore.
What about you? Are you still painting? I heard you were working on some portrait of a congressman.
Actually, no, I stopped after Lucy.
I'm sorry. I thought it might be cathartic. From the Greek catharsis, or cleansing, or relief. You know what cathartic means. You were just acknowledging me, so no painting.
Software development. A startup.
FST.
It's pronounced fast. No vowels. Did you see my Kickstarter video on Facebook? We're the next generation of communication technology, combining all of the elements, speaking, typing, gestures into one. Think how quickly we could then communicate and integrate.
Hold on, wait.
Well, I'm not done. We have to harness the technology so it doesn't rule us. Once we used to write a letter, now we email quicker, better. From chisel and paint to pen and ink, from type and text and speech and sync, we're on the brink of something new. Just think of what we could do.
We?
To get the message. Get the message.
No.
Me and you. I want you to work with me.
What?
I need someone who knows linguistics.
Linguistics.
See, you're perfect.
Yesterday we were just carving in stone.
Now it's zeros and ones etched in silicone. Today everyone knows that less is more. faster than before.
It could also be fist.
What?
FST. It could also be fist. How do I know it's fast without the vowels?
First of all, it's a branding thing. Second, the software and app we're developing slowly eliminates unnecessary vowels as part of our word reduction campaign.
Word reduction. That's funny.
It's not meant to be
Look,
funny.
I
This
wanted
is
to
going to
talk to you
revolutionize how we interact with each other electronically. There's Connect and Siri, and if we can combine that with the dictionary
You've always
to
made
increase
fun of my work. Ever
I'm not
since
making
freshman
fun,
year.
Noah. I'm trying to offer you a job.
Only you would offer a word reduction job to a guy who works at the dictionary. There are hundreds of thousands of words in the world, in the English language alone, even more. Every year there are more and more words created, each with a story of their own. Shakespeare invented hundreds, Dr. Seuss gave us Grinch and Nerd. A picture may be worth thousands, but I can't put a price on one word. I spend my time doing research, tracing each word through the years. I fear books will soon become relics, merely souvenirs. There are hundreds of thousands of words in the world just starting to take their shape. Technology doesn't increase our shared knowledge, it only serves as an escape. You want me to help your startup? You're looking for quid pro quo. I'll keep my answer short. No.
The Battle of New Orleans was fought.
What does that have to do
The
with
Battle
anything?
of New Orleans was fought on January 8, 1815, 1 month after the Treaty of Ghent was signed. 400 people were killed and over 1,000 were injured because it took them a month to find out that the war was over.
There is a difference between message by horseback and email. Language is a common bond.
Do you know how much time you spend online per month?
No.
32 hours! That's 6 hours per month writing email.
Ooh, as you probably do because of your job. 32 hours per month. 384 hours per year divided by
I can
24.
do math.
That's 16 days. 16 days in 1 year that I could have spent with Lucy instead of spending my time checking email. When she died, I tried painting. I spent weeks wandering, thinking, trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Aristotle.
What?
Aristotle. Verb. To analyze them steadily while forming a philosophy. Aristotle. It's one of the words Lucy invented.
This is her handwriting.
When she was sick, she would write to me suggesting new words.
Flour. F-L-H-O-U-R.
Now, the time it takes to bake. As in, this pie will be ready in a flour or two.
Why did you save these?
There's something about handwritten words, like painting. It's very different than taking a picture, saving an email, or tagging someone. I plan to nominate some of these words for next year's edition. That's why I wrote to you.
I'm at a loss for words.
Here.
What can I do to repay you?
Is it too much to ask to keep the vowels?
We already made the logo. I have a meeting with the head of linguistics at Yale.
Right.
It's good to see you. Thank you.
You need someone who knows how language behaves.
Yes.
You need someone who knows how words shift in culture.
Yes.
You also need someone who understands semiotics, morphology, and kinesics.
In plain English.
You need a words guy.
Can I count you in?
Give me some time to think about it.
Not too much, okay?
Write me.
I'll call.
Good. See you soon.
Spelling, definition, origin.
Mrs. Ives said she wanted this building to be, quote, an ornament to the city and worthy of its site, unquote. The echoes of this building, those breathed into it by Mr. Gilbert, and those that have grown over its 125 years of use, have made it so much more. It has long since ceased being merely decoration, but instead has become a spine from which the pages of New Haven's history hang. So, as this handsome, fireproof building enters its next chapter, we hope that its echoes will not diminish, but instead will grow in both volume and strength. Oh. Mary Ives gave us a building. Let us continue to fill it with stories.